Hello, testing 1, 2, 3, 4. I see audio there. No sound. Can't have no sound. There it is. All right. Okay. Well, then, thank you. Um, let's start over. It's 4 o'clock. I can't even talk now. I'm freaked out. It's 4 o'clock on Monday, and you know what that means. Time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. And welcome to the first show of 2014, this time with audio. Let me get the chat room open. Hello, all of you guys. Juliet says, good, I didn't miss anything. I'm not sure you will now, even though the audio's on. Anyway, as I was mouthing, we went to the Shirelli's house, and I feel bad for Rob's daughter because she was born on New Year's Eve. She ends up spending every one of her birthdays with the Lasco family. But we played a game called Heads Up, and you play it with an iPhone or whatever. And I think Ellen DeGeneres featured it on the show, and it's kind of like the game Password. And you pick a category, and the words pop up on the phone, and you break up into teams, and your teammates see the word or phrase and have to give you clues, and you guess it. And if you get it right, you tilt it up, and it scores a point. And if you get it wrong, you tilt it down, and you pass on to the next word. And it's actually a lot of fun. So there you go. That's what we did. What's for dinner tonight, Scott Hansen? Are you guys all freezing your butts off back east and in the Midwest? I saw the weather map this morning, and got to say, it was one of the days where I'm really glad. Wow, minus 15. Yeah, that's cold. Yeah, it's a little chilly here. It's probably like, I don't know, 65, 70. Anyway, all right. Should check out the Sarah Silverman iPhone fun games. Can you play them with kids? I'm guessing not, because all of our kids were there. Okay, well, Toronto, brutally cold. 58 degrees, minus 58 with wind chill. Holy smokes, where do you live, Johari? 57 in New York, 75 in Puerto Rico, minus 4 in Montana. All right, cold. Okay, so I've been seeing a lot of listings lately that have been coming across my desk where the companies are asking for stuff that doesn't sound like a one-man band. They're looking for stuff that sounds like a live band. And the examples I'm going to play you today are very dated, but they do make a point. And I don't know where to begin with this other than I'm going to play you two records that I worked on that are both extremely unique records in that not only were the bands live in the studio, they were really live in the studio, as in, for the most part, the whole band played live. And, you know, look, this stuff was recorded. The first thing I'm going to play you, oops, I need props. First thing I'm going to play you are some tracks from the Stills Young Long May You Run album. I was the assistant engineer on this. Don Gaiman engineered it and co-produced it with Stephen and Neil. It started out it started out actually as Stills and Young, and they were going to call the album Stillborn Young. And then Crosby and Nash joined us. And if I remember correctly, we worked for 37 days straight without leaving the studio, because generally speaking, Stills and Young would come in and work a 12-hour day, and then Crosby and Nash would come in and work a 12-hour day. So Don Gaiman and I and my friend Steve Hart, who was there for a lot of the record, were expected to be there 24 hours a day. And I got to tell you, that was a very long 37 days, but I learned so much. And here's why. Is they wanted to record the record live, and they had a full band in the studio. And we barely used headphones on it. And where's that picture? Neil Young had this guitar rig set up where he actually takes his amps and then would remic them and send them through a PA. He also had a neat little pedal that you would press the button and it would turn little servo motors. Whoops. I gotta move the chat screen over. Would turn little servo motors that turn little wires that would actually turn the knobs on the amp. That's right, David. Don Gaiman went on to work with John Mellencamp, and this record was a few years before that. It wasn't with Taylor and Reeves. Let's see. Chocolate Perry played bass on it, who is still a friend of mine to this day. Yes, we did have a shower at the studio. This was at Criteria Studios in Miami. Let's see. Where are the band members? Here we go. Stephen Stills, guitar, piano, vocals. Neil Young, guitars, piano, harmonica, string synthesizer, and vocals. Joe Lala played percussion and background vocals. Jerry Aiello played organ and piano. George Chocolate Perry played bass and background vocals. And Joe Vitale, who's still around, played drums, flute, and background vocals. The cool part was that at some point Don Gaiman, had been up for like 2 weeks straight, and he said to me, "Can you run this thing?" And he pointed to the console, and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Then get a rough mix of this song together." And I got to record. At one point, I got to actually engineer group background vocals with Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young before Crosby and Nash got removed from the record, and it went back to being Stills Young. So I do remember it was the only time I ever pinched myself on the leg and said, "Do you realize where you are and what you're doing?" And I had my finger on the fader and my hand was actually shaking. And it was my audio bar mitzvah. And I was very grateful to Don for letting me do that. I remember looking back, he was tilted up against the back wall of the control room, nodding out. So anyway, we did the record. I mean, we had a full percussion set up out in the room. We had a drum kit set up in a booth. We had acoustic guitars. We had like an acoustic setup at one end of the room that could handle all four of the guys playing acoustic guitar when it was Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. So we had like a tree set up with vocal mics and acoustic guitar mics. And then we had an electric setup, and they would just literally like be playing an acoustic guitar on a verse and then put it down and walk over and sit down at a keyboard and start playing that for the chorus. So I learned a lot. And one thing that I learned from Don Gaiman, who's an incredible engineer, a very technical guy, but a very artistic fellow as well. He set the room up, if I remember correctly, using protractors and looking for best rejection angles on all the microphones. So it's not like we just set the stuff up out in the room and went for it. You had to think about where the bleed was going to come from. And the floor was carpeted in the studio. We did it in Studio B at Criteria, which so many incredible records were made in that room. Oh man, I couldn't even list them all, but like Allman Brother records and stuff were made in that room. So I learned about this concept of doing a full live band in the studio and very few overdubs. And so I'm going to play you a few things. I'm going to play you one track where everybody got to go home. After 37 days, everybody went home. And I remember Stills invited me to go back to the house he was renting on Miami Beach because it was very close to the studio, and I lived more than an hour away. He was afraid I wouldn't make it home without nodding out at the wheel, so he very graciously invited me to come and crash at his house. I didn't make it past the living room. I found a couch, crashed out in there, and like an hour or two later, I feel somebody shaking me, and it was Steven waking me up going, "Dude, are you sleeping?" And he woke me up and made me go back to the studio with him, and we went into another room. We didn't want to disturb anything in Studio B, so I had to call Margie, the studio manager, and Stills and I set up a guitar rig for him in Studio C. He also didn't want to wake up Don Gaiman. So I got to record Stephen Stills playing a 12/8 blues lick over and over and over. And let's just say that he was under a lot of stimulants, if you know what I mean. And I was just dead tired. And I'm like, please, Steven, don't make me do this. And he just played this blues lick over and over and over. And under the influence of stimulants, was convinced it was like the best thing ever. But it's a really good example of one guy building a song versus a full band playing. Now, remember, this stuff was recorded back in like 1975. So what was that? 39 years ago? 39 years ago. Yeah, 39 years ago. So I'm going to play you this stuff. I actually need a tissue. I have the sniffles. And not for the same reason that people did back in the studio then. Okay, so, yes, Amanda, you may need a faster convention because you're always having these connection issues. Yes, Rockstar. That's what we use now, Rockstar. So I am going to play you some songs from this, and then we're going to move on to another record that was done live in the studio in a more exciting way. And I just learned so much about recording a full band live. Then after we do this little walk down memory lane and listen to a bunch of dated stuff, I want to talk to you guys. I realize not everybody has the physical space to record a full band. Or enough players to record a full band, but you may want to sound like you're a full live band, and I'm going to give you some suggestions on how to fake it. Okay, so I'm going to play you little bits of this record, and this is for educational purposes only, and remember, it was recorded a very long time ago, and this is Long May You Run, the title cut. 24 tracks.
We've been through some things together, with trunks of memories still to come. We found things to do in stormy weather. Long may you run. Long may you run. Long may you run. Although these changes have come, with your chrome bars shining in the sun. Long may you run.
Vocals are still good, even though it wasn't CSNNY.
Well, it was back in Blind River in 1960
Not contemporary now.
when I last saw you live. But we missed that ship on the long decline. Long may you run.
Even though they misspelled my last name.
Long may you run. Long may you run. Although these changes have come, with your chrome heart shining in the sun. Long may you run.
All right, so it's got a vibe. It's certainly not slick. This was recorded right around the time the Eagles came out with One of These Nights, which was very slick. So the difference is Neil Young loved raw and vibey stuff. Stills, I think, was a fan of that. Crosby was off in his own world in a good way. If you've ever listened to the David Crosby solo record, which is somewhere in the 70s, I think late 70s, I think is a work of art. And Graham Nash, sweetest guy you'll ever meet, and beautiful voice. Anyway, but it had a vibe. I remember there was no click track. You had live drums in the room, live like timbales and shakers and bell trees set up in the room. The bass was going through an amp and a direct. Live vocal mics in the room, and we used some PA wedges, floor monitors, and barely used headphones on it. And I thought, man, this is genius. And so I learned a lot from working on that record, even though I was only the measly assistant engineer. I think I was like 19 years old at the time and had maybe been in the business for like a year. Let's listen to some other stuff. Midnight on the Bay. I was actually sitting on the back of Neil's boat when he was woodshedding this song on the back of his boat, which, if I remember correctly, the boat he owned at the time was called the Evening Coconut, and it was in Coconut Grove Marina, and we were sitting on the back of the boat, and he was working on this. Stills wasn't the only B3 player.
Sure feels good to me.
It's got a groove, you know?
What's this I see? There's someone
It's got vulnerability.
Walking right up to me.
Okay, so you get the idea. Let's play something. I'm going to play something more complex with like the full band really working it in the room. This one is called Guardian Angel. Joey Lala is incredible on this. This was Stills on the B3.
There's a guardian angel watching over you, yeah. Better mind your way, just might leave on you. In the darkness, who else is really with you? Only you alone. Gotta live with you all the time. When there's no more time and nothing left to do, who will hear your heart? Your guardian angel.
Yes, I actually got to record the backgrounds on this one.
All these kindred spirits, but you know them if they stood in front of you. From below, loneliness eats at you.
hear the guitar? That's the one Steve Stills used on Wooden Ships, the White Thunderbird.
Passing stranger looks away from you.
Okay, so you can hear, I mean, just the energy in the room with these guys all playing with each other. Very few overdubs on this. And I mentioned that Stills was playing the White Thunderbird, and that was, in fact, the guitar that he used on Wooden Ships on the first CSN album. And I got to tell you a quick story. One night, very late, probably like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and Steven leaned it up against the back wall in the control room, and it had a cable plugged into it. And I said, Steven, that is just asking to be knocked over. And he got really pissed off at me, and I got a very stern lecture from Mr. Stills about, how long I've been doing this, kid, and nobody's going to knock over my guitar. I don't think he finished the sentence. Somebody walked in the control room, hit the cable, knocked the guitar over, and the neck broke. And I'm not talking about it broke where it meets the guitar body. I'm talking about the neck cracked in half. It was a very sad night for Mr. Stills, and I couldn't look him in the eye for like a week after that. Anyway, okay, so now you've heard the whole band jamming together. Now, remember the aforementioned night after we'd done 37 days in the studio, and Stills woke me up and said, I got an idea for a song, got to record it now. I went back to the studio with him. We went into a separate studio, dragged his guitar amp over there, threw up some 24-track 2-inch tape, and he just played this lick over and over and over, literally from 2 or 3 in the morning until 8 or 9 the next morning, probably 7 or 8 in the morning, because I remember he went home and then I just crashed on the studio lobby couch, and then people started showing up for work. So what we had after that session of him just playing that same lick over and over, telling me it was the greatest song he'd ever written, I'm singing in the control room, just like, please, dear God, make this end, was this song, which you can hear what happens when you get the one-man, what is with this thing? The one-man band syndrome, where this was almost all Steven overdubbing on top of the guitar riff. So I recorded the guitar riff, and then I think I maybe overdubbed the bass, and then other stuff got overdubbed by Gaiman later. I stand corrected. That's Chocolate playing bass, I think.
Can you hear me? I wanna talk to you. Listen to the. Do you know me like I know you? Do you love me like I love you? She gonna sing it.
It just doesn't have that vibe with the full band.
We'll be old friends. Try again till the road ends. We'll be flying again. Listen to me sing to you. I got the music. I need the space. I like to use it out of space.
Okay, now we're going to go back to Guardian Angel 2 and just listen to the difference.
There's a guardian angel watching over you, yes. your way just might leave on you in the darkness.
Just has a whole different feel with the full band in the room. Okay, so that's enough of that record. But I wanted to play it for you because it was the predecessor, and dear God, I can't open this. It was the thing that allowed me to make this next record, on which I was the first engineer. And I got a call. Remember Melanie? I got a brand new pair of roller skates, Melanie. Melanie, I believe, the first artist to open at Woodstock. So maybe a year and a half after that Stills Young record, I had left Criteria, and there was a one-room, 24-track, same gear as Criteria, really nice room. Studio had opened up in Fort Lauderdale, and a wealthy grandfather built it for his grandson who couldn't get a job at Criteria, and the kid couldn't really engineer, couldn't run a business. I went there, I brought a project there, and the guy just, after about a month, handed me the keys to the studio and said, look, you know what you're doing, here you go. I didn't own it, but for the next 5 or 6 years, it was my world-class studio, and it was pretty awesome. So, Melanie's husband was a gentleman named Peter Shikarik. He was her husband, her Svengali best friend, and her producer. And so Peter Shikarik called me up and said, hey, Melanie and I heard some stuff that you engineered, and we want to do a record with you. But we're always disappointed with the studio recordings because they just don't have the vibe that Melanie has when she does live performances. And I went, ding, 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 I have an idea. Why don't we do a studio record, but live with the full band? And then I had a little stroke of genius, which was, why don't we have an audience there? So we ran a contest on a local radio station in Miami, it was a Miami radio station, and we invited people to the studio, and I think we allowed 30 people a night to join us. Now, the compliment for the band, and remember, this was all done live. The studio itself, the room that the guys played in, was 25 feet wide by 43 feet long, with ceilings that had pyramids built into them that were roughly 4 feet by 4 feet at their base. And I think the ceiling at the bottom of the pyramid was 16 feet, and they went up to like 20 feet. So it was a fairly spacious room. A lot of carpet, some polycylindrical diffusers on the walls, big bass traps, and the control room had carpeting on the back wall, which was pretty typical of that back in the day. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to tell you, this was done on 24 track, 30 people in the room, very, very, very few overdubs. And I got to use what I learned on that Stills Young album, which was plotting out the room on a big piece of paper using a protractor and a T-bar and making sure, because we didn't really isolate a lot of the stuff. The drums were in a booth that looked kind of like a space capsule, but it had an open section that was, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 feet high. So they could bleed out into the room, kind of had like an umbrella top over the drums, and they sat on a big base of sand and concrete and wood floor in there, and then carpeting on the interior walls, I think. So they were semi-isolated, but not completely. Melanie played acoustic guitar live on all the songs and sang live on all the songs. And we had a second acoustic guitarist named Sal DeTroia, who was most famous for playing guitar on a lot of Simon & Garfunkel stuff, including The Boxer. And yes, Melanie's still around. Her husband, Peter Shikarik, sadly died a few years ago. Melanie still performs and has a huge fan base all over the world. She's got to be in her mid to late 60s now. Maybe older, but she still kicks butt from what I hear. So we had an MCI 528. Oh, check this out. It's going to be a little bit reflective, but this is me working on that record. So I had a 28 input, or a main frame with 28 inputs, or 28 slots, but only 24 channels at the time. I think I ended up getting 4 more channels by the time we mixed the record. And we had very little outboard because this was a pretty new studio, and the grandfather got tired of buying more gear for the kids. So this record was done with Melanie singing, the drummer live, bass player live, Sal DeTroia playing acoustic guitar live, with Melanie also playing acoustic guitar live. She would literally stand up playing acoustic guitar and singing, and have audience members sitting at her feet, drinking wine, smoking pot. And we had Robbie Georgia playing electric guitar and singing background vocals, mostly Strat. Tony Battaglia, who I remain friends with to this day, who played rhythm and lead, electric guitar, and sang background vocals. Unbelievably talented guy. Bobby Leone playing bass. Louis Cabasa playing piano, some kind of synthesizer, I can't remember what, and an ARP string ensemble sitting on top of the piano. We did have the piano lid closed and blankets thrown over that. And Pat Sturriali singing background vocals. And do you remember the a cappella group, the Persuasions? We brought them in for a song and had them sing live in the room. So 30 people live in the room for this thing. And the reason that I want to play you a bunch of this stuff is there's I only had two LA2A limiters, which were very basic URI limiters back then, and two DBX 160 limiters. So that was it. 4 limiter compressors for the whole record. I probably had the bass just on one track, kick drum on track 2, snare drum on track 3, tom-toms pre-mixed down to track 3 and 4. Actually, you know what? I did drums left and drums right. So I had the toms and the overheads. I had the hi-hat on its own track, but did the toms and the overheads mixed down to 2 tracks, which are probably 3 and 4, and then just spread them full left, full right, and then kind of pre-mix them in between the full left and full right. And then we had 2 live chambers, which were basically 2 empty rooms that were roughly, I'd say 12 feet by 12 feet, and they went up to about 20 feet high. They were kind of like elevator shafts, and we had Bose bookshelf speakers on the floor and Neumann KM84s on twine or nylon rope, hanging from the ceiling on pulleys, so we could bring the mic closer or farther away from the speaker. And the chambers were really good sounding chambers, very slick rooms. They were like Italian plaster walls, so very reflective and almost too reflective. It had like a 4 or 5 second decay time. So to shorten the decay time, we'd bring the microphone closer, we would throw moving blankets on the floor, and it was really tough to get them to be balanced out because we had them panned full left and full right. And let's see, what else? We had no external preamps, no external EQ. I used all the pre's and EQ from the console. For mics, I had a bunch of, probably half a dozen or so 87s, I think 4 14s, AKG 414s, probably a half a dozen Shure 57s, and a couple of Sennheiser 421s. Let's see. Oh, yeah, very few headphones. Like I said, we used wedges on PA monitor, wedges on the floor, spitting up at the band members' faces. Remember, we had a live monitor sitting on the piano, blowing into the piano player's face. And we had background vocal mics set up for the band members and room mics. And all this took place in this room that was, like 800 or 900 square feet. And then when we mixed it, I would say the average mix took 1 to 3 hours. So we recorded, the band rehearsed for a week or two. It was a double live album. I don't remember how many songs in total on the whole thing, but they were well rehearsed when they got there, still working out some parts. And we just recorded the whole record like a live performance, top to bottom every night. Only if somebody had like a major meltdown did we go back to the top of the song and re-record it. And then after we were done, I would cut the 24 track. We'd listen back to all the takes, and we would cut the 2-inch tape and take, like the first verse from night number 1 and combine that with the first chorus of the same song from night number 2. So obviously tuning was really important, but remember, none of this was done to a click. So what you have is total humanity on these tracks. And listen to, I didn't worry so much about, like, didn't worry a whole lot about EQ, didn't worry a whole lot about compression or limiting. And I was feeding, had to do different mixes to different players. So I had like 4 or 5 separate mixes going live to the players so they could all hear what they heard or needed to hear in their monitors. And some of them wanted reverb. So I was doing reverb sends as well. I think I had one digital delay, a very early Lexicon digital delay. No automation, no auto-tune. We were, decades away from auto-tune working or being invented. And so, and I don't have a good track list because I lost the CD cover for this. So, let's have a listen. This was 1977. Whoa, scratch.
Running after love is like running after someone else's dream. It's taking over without me once again. Riding out my passions as they go, giving life to love I know. A part of me that longs for the pain. So take me once again. Taking it easy this time. Taking it easy love. Taking it easy.
Live background vocals.
Well, I'm taking it easy this time. Taking it easy love. Taking it easy this time. Chasing after love with beggars, rolling high and reaching for your own. Far from heart and off the bone. You're coming out alone. Taking it easy this time. Taking it easy love.
If you listen carefully, you hear audience members clapping at Melanie's feet.
Well, I'm taking it easy this time. Taking it easy love. Taking it easy this time.
I pan the drums as I'm sitting at them.
Taking it easy this time. Taking it easy love. Taking it easy. Taking it easy. Taking it easy this time. Taking it easy love. Running after love is like running after
Had to ride all the input levels like crazy.
It's taking over without me once again. Running after love is like running after love and the same train. Take me once again. The same train. Running after love.
Feel the intensity building. No click. I forgot the audience had to hear because they had to hear. So I had a PA. I had to mix this live, not only separate monitors for different band members so they could hear what they needed to hear, but I was running a PA mix for the audience sitting on the floor at the same time. But the whole point of this is just feel the dynamics. Check out the instruments coming in and out. I don't want to play this whole next song because it's like 6 or 7 minutes long, but Melanie had 2 songs, one called Cyclone and one called Candles in the Rain. And I'm going to try and go midway on the song so you can hear this breakdown that they do. And just the emotion, the vibe, the dynamic, and just listen carefully to how the instruments kind of come in and go out. Yet you can find all of them at the same time, but it's so much more interesting than a one-man band doing everything layer by layer and compressing the piss out of it. So let's listen to Cyclone, Candles in the Rain, and there is one thing I hate about this record, and that is Tony Battaglia played a Strat going through a B3 Leslie cabinet, and I hated the sound of that thing. It showed up on the last song. It always just annoyed the hell out of me, but he wanted it, so he got it. So I'm going to start this one out, then skip to...
I wait for the day.
Remember, all live vocals.
To burn into night.
Hear that chamber?
And then I wait for dawn. And I open my eyes when it gets bright. And know I must be home. Oh God, I
No, I love the Leslie. I just didn't like the Strat going through it.
know be home. I must be home. Hold tight. Cyclone down love, music was lost in the overtone. Sweat on the brow, blood on the lips, love for the money and more at the fingertips.
Listen to the interplay of the acoustics, the electrics, and the piano.
Hold tight, cyclone, a fool to continue with love keeps me holding on, and it feels good, yes it does, real slow. I love you, hurt me, but pain makes me let you go, and makes me let you go. Hold tight, cyclone. Don't need no religion to look for the kingdom come. You gotta feel to the ground, reach for the sky, leap off the ecstasy. If you fall blind, if you fall
Okay, listen to how delicate this becomes.
We were so close.
Live backgrounds.
Lost no road. We bled inside each other's blood.
So the whole time we were doing that, I'm screaming to my assistant, 23 up, quarter inch, 21 down, eighth of an inch, because we were riding all the input levels. And we had, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 different mixes going out. We had reverb sends going out. We had the live monitor mix, the PA mix to the audience. We had, I think, a separate mix for the guitar players, the drummer, the keyboard player, and the audience. So I had 4 mixes going out to the room, if I remember correctly, plus the reverb sends. It was just an incredible thing. But the whole point in playing it for you was the vibe is just so amazing because we recorded the whole band live, and nobody ever does that anymore. And when I see listings coming in for people asking for stuff that sounds like a live band, they probably want something that sounds like, your typical rock record today, which is not really recorded like this. But if you could pull off something like this, obviously it would be difficult to have an audience and everything. But I'm trying to make the point that get as many players in the room as you can, and don't worry about the technical stuff so much as worrying about capturing the performance, which we've talked about many, many times before. I'll play a few more, and then I'm going to tell you how to cheat at doing this. I don't know what the tracks are on the CD, because they didn't put the entire live album on the CD. I'm just going to try and find stuff. Oh, I'm gonna go up to the end of this. You got to hear Mel's vocal performance at the end of this. It's called "Don't Make Me Laugh." Live harmony guitar solo. We did overdub a second pass of backgrounds.
Just leave me in my beautiful sadness. Just leave me in my beautiful sadness. Just leave me.
Check out this vocal. Okay, so what nobody probably noticed is there was a severe guitar amp on in there. And we just didn't care. The vibe was so good. We didn't go back and fix the guitar part. We didn't gate it. We didn't, clean up that part of the track. We just left it in because it added to the overall vibe. There's just something magical about vibe, and that track has plenty of vibe. Um, let's listen to some more before I go on to the cheat sheet stuff. I can't remember. I'm playing it through my stereo and a pair of NS10s, which you see sitting behind me, to the Luger. That's how I'm getting the musical signal from your source to the show. Playing a CD off a little portable because it's just faster than using a computer. Oops.
There's no thought.
Okay, this was live with the Persuasions. The a cappella group, the Persuasions, were in town playing at the local civic theater, and we needed background singers for the song. We thought it'd be cool to do something that sounded gospel, so we called them up, got them over to the studio, and remember, this is full band, 7 or 8 pieces live, with, I think there were 4 or 5 guys in the Persuasion singing live, and we had to set up yet another set of monitors for them, floor monitors blowing up at them.
Like the fear of harm, and though good gets kicked around, the little falls on everyone. I do believe when said and done, that a little falls on everyone. Where's the hand I can hold? Where's the fire when I'm feeling cold? There's no warmth like the sun, and a little shines on everyone. I do believe when said and done, that a little shines on everyone. I believe I've heard the story. I believe all about me.
Hear one of the guys in the band going, "That was good, man." I'm telling you, there's so much just random stuff hidden in those tracks because it was so live. Anyway, boy, did the audience get a treat hearing this stuff live or what? But that back then, everything was this good. I mean, a lot of stuff. I'm trying to find a song that we did without the audience there. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and everybody was a little wired on Rockstar. And Mel decided that she wanted to record a song. Everybody had gone home, and I said, well, we can't, get the audience back here in 10 minutes. So we decided to try and recapture it as a live event, and we moved Melanie back to right in front of the drum booth. I mean, it was one of those things where she had to stare the drummer in the eye, and we turned down all the lights in the studio, and we lit some candles, and it was very, very, very sensitive. And when we got to the end of the song, I mean, I literally had tears streaming down my cheeks, and everybody in the studio was so moved. And I looked at my assistant and said, "Play that back." And he goes, "I didn't record it." Melanie wigged out, stomped out of the studio. It took me about an hour to go out there and get her to come back in, and we recorded it again. I can't remember which song it was, but I'll try and find it. So you can hear the difference between, and on that song we did actually add some overdubs, and you can hear a difference. Not just sonically, but emotionally and vibe-wise. Let's see what this one is. Nah, don't like that one. Didn't love that one. This one. Oh no, this was with the audience, but listen to the sensitivity of this. Tuning issues, amplifiers buzzing, all kinds of weirdness, but it's still magical.
We'll take care of each other, I'll be sister.
Yeah, I bet Melanie remembers too.
Mother and lover will be friends. During changes of weather, let's be together on our own. Let's be together alone.
Little auto-tune needed there.
We're believers. We've been hurt by believing, needing people. We know looking's not seen. I see needs that might be answered by forever together.
Yes, she wrote them all. Well, not everything in the album, but everything I've heard so far, I think.
Let's be together.
Listen to the interplay of the instruments all the way through.
Let's be together. I keep on asking, is it want or is it me that keeps me needing you forever? If we could make it so it wasn't pushed from me, we would never be alone. We'll learn living like the words of a good song. We'll learn timing, balance, and rhythm. We'll make it music. I don't want to sing it all alone. Let's be together. Let's be together. Let's be together
Everybody in the room just vibing out. Anyway, that may be like my favorite moment on that whole record. I just remember the magical feeling. I was looking out in the studio and seeing all the players just looking at each other, going, "Bring it down, let it fall away," like snowflakes, and just wow. Um, Question: do you prefer the guitars far right, left hand on the drums? I don't really understand that. Um, anyway, yeah, I love that one. See if there's anything else worth listening to here. I think I've played this one on the show before. Melanie actually did a custom version for my kids.
There's a hole in my pocket and some mending to be done. In the wells that the water praise the rain and curse the sun. Curse the rain and the flood as I go swimming downtown. But there's work to be done, so buckle down. Buckle down, everybody, everybody, buckle down. Buckle down, everybody, buckle down. There's a time to be lazy and a time to hang around. But there's work to be done, so buckle down. On my boat's run aground and the crew is drunk below. And I blew out my sail and now I'm waiting for a tow. Gonna whistle up the wind and then I buy the crew around. But there's work to be done, so buckle down. Buckle down, everybody, buckle, buckle, buckle down. Buckle down, everybody, buckle down. There's a time to be lazy and a time to hang around. But there's work to be done, so buckle down. If you need a little money, go get some. Buckle down. If your car's out of gas, it just won't run. Buckle down. There's a time to be lazy and a time to hang around. But there's work to be done, so buckle down. Buckle down, everybody, everybody, buckle down. Buckle down, everybody, buckle down. There's a time to be lazy and a time to hang around. But there's work to be done, so buckle down. If your clothes are getting shabby, go get some. Buckle down. If you're getting kind of flabby, you gotta run. There's a time
The audience was getting drunk and singing along by this point.
But there's work to be done, so buckle down. Buckle down, everybody, everybody, buckle down. Buckle down.
Good drinking song.
Buckle down. There's a time to be lazy and a time to hang around. But there's work to be done, so buckle down. There's a time to be lazy and a time to hang around. But there's work to be done, so buckle
I gotta find you the one song we did without the audience in the room. Yeah, it was an amazing project. I think out of everything I've ever recorded, it was definitely the most challenging thing I've ever done and the most fun. But it's all about the vibe. Let me go back way early. Let's see if I can find the song.
Do you
This is it.
believe it's morning?
No audience.
I'm alive, but it's the last thing on my mind. If our nighttime words mean goodbye, let our morning words become. Didn't your eyes say you'd never change your mind?
Feel how it feels different because there were a lot of overdubs.
I do believe it. I do believe my eyes. Do you believe it? Do you believe my eyes? I do. I do believe your eyes. Do you believe my I went to bed at sunrise. Now I sleep the whole day through. My eyes will open to the darkness, and in the darkness will be you. And in the darkness, my only light is you. And in the darkness, the light is in your eyes. I do believe your eyes. I do. Do you believe my I do believe your eyes. I do believe. Do you believe my eyes? I do believe it. I do believe it. I do believe.
Yeah, you can hear her soul. And that's the point. So yeah, that one did have, we recorded that one at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was really edgy and not in a very good mood because we didn't get a recorded take the first time she did it. And of course, that was the best take of that song she would ever do in her lifetime. And I tended to agree. This was not as good. But yeah, I think that we did one acoustic guitar, the bass, and the drums live with the room totally dark except for one blue light kind of raining down on Melanie and some candles around her. And she was literally like 4 feet away from the cymbals, staring into the drum booth, which was, had this big opening, so there's plenty of leakage. And she insisted that we record it with a live vocal, and she just wanted to stare the drummer in the eyes. His name was Stan Kipper. And it was, I remember it being really hard to like not have the cymbals just like totally leak into her mic. And I was using, I think for this one, I used, I think a Tube 47 on the vocal for that, which I couldn't use. The Tube 47 tended to crap out a little bit when I used it in the live room. If the guitar player did something that was really loud, and but it had really good rejection on the back end of the mic, so I was able to use it on this and got some of the cymbals in there, but they didn't crap out the mic. Thank God for that. Anyway, so now, obviously not every one of you guys can record with a full band with 7 or 8 pieces like that. But this does teach us that record with as many pieces live as you can. And I know a lot of you guys don't have the capability to record a live drum kit, or you don't have the physical space. So here's what I would do. Here's the cheat sheet for making stuff sound like a band. And that is use loops of real drummers. For those of you who were at the Road Rally, remember for Shirelli's thing, when he did the live production on the stage in the Grand Ballroom, he didn't use MIDI drums, didn't use samples. He used an actual loop of a real drummer. And it felt great. It had more dynamic and more personality to it, and it was great. So use that for starters. If you need to add some salt and pepper to the drums, you want to add extra hi-hat parts or insert some turnarounds, great. But use a real drummer playing a loop, and that is a good thing. Okay, now, after you've laid that down, record the bass and something else together. There is nothing that replaces the magic of two people sitting close by each other, looking into each other's eyes, and feeling the groove when they play. So let's say your next thing is going to be an acoustic guitar and the bass. Have them play at the same time so that they feel like they're playing something together. And don't worry, if one of them makes a mistake, don't stop. Just let it go. And just record 3 or 4 takes top to bottom, and you'll get something that will only need a couple of little touch-ups. My next note was go for full takes and then go in and punch for fixes. Okay, for vocals. This is, you guys probably know this already, but just in case some of you are kind of new to recording and don't know, always tell, if you're not the vocalist, always tell the vocalist, let's run one down for levels. And always, always, always preset your preamp and your input fader and approximate what you think you're going to need. If you know your gear at all, you'll be able, go for like a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio on the compressor, and set the threshold so it mildly to moderately kicks in, but doesn't, squish the crap out of the vocal. And just don't do anything and then say to the vocalist, okay, let's run one down just so I can get a level on you, and let them run down the full song. And I guarantee you that 9 times out of 10, that take will be better than anything that they will get all night long. And then you can use that as the basis. After they beat themselves up trying to sing because they get so inside of their own head, go back to that first vocal and don't tell them you recorded it. Just play that one back, and they'll say, ooh, what was that one? And don't worry about the fact that some of the levels may be a little low or a little hot. You can always fix that stuff. And you can go back and comp in the parts that, they may have like skipped a line or, had some clams in the vocal because they were just warming up and they didn't care. That's what's going to make the performance special. So just go back and comp in those parts or punch in those parts. And that will make the vocal feel so much more real, and so make the whole thing feel so much more alive. Worry about performers and performances and the vibe and not perfection. I'm telling you, we live in an age of perfection because everything is perfect, because it can be now. But you guys were all loving this stuff. Why? Because it just is so refreshing to hear that live vibe and the music coming from the soul of musicians, coming up from their toenails, through their bowels, in through their heart, and out of their mouth. That does something that you can't get when you try to perfect. Okay, if you use synthesizers, let's say you're doing sampled strings or sampled brass. Remind me to remind you or tell you about how to fix a bad snare sound. I'll do that in a second. But you know what? Like when I mix this, I don't know if you could tell in that last song, we had an ARP string ensemble doing the string part. Got to remember, this was 1977, so that was 37 years ago. Do you know how bad the ARP string ensemble sounded? That was about as early a string sound as you could lay your hands on. So what I would do is I would take the output of that track on the tape machine and send a mix of just the strings out into the big studio monitors. We had some like mid-size 15-inch 3-ways that were mounted high up, blowing down out into the studio room. And I would set up 2 or 3 pairs of stereo mics. One that was probably 8 or 10 feet back. Here, I can't see because I've got the chat room open, but one pair of mics looking up at those speakers from 8 or 10 feet away. Another stereo pair, maybe even like a an XY or an MS pattern, and then another pair all the way at the back of the room. And I would screw around with those levels on those, and frankly, you want to get a little bit out of phase because that creates that natural out of phaseness that you're going to get with a real string section in a room. So it depends on the octave, it depends on the parts that are being played. But what I'm saying is re-mic those sounds using the real room. And after you do it a few times or spend a few hours screwing around with those balances, it's going to start to sound way better than just a signal coming through a wire and into your mix monitors. I guarantee you. Now, if you want to fix a snare sound, which seems highly unlikely in the days that we live in now, where snare sounds are so amazingly good. But something I used to do quite a bit, if I captured a great performance and didn't love my snare sound and couldn't really fix it as well as I would like with EQ or compression or gating or whatever I would do on that particular snare, I would send the snare track out to a coffee can with a speaker in it. I took like a 3-inch speaker, maybe a 4-inch, I don't know. And those coffee cans that are roughly this big around and that long, yeah, maybe 6 inches long, throw some cotton balls in there or maybe a little loose fiberglass. Don't overpack it. And then take a speaker and lay it in there. Obviously, you need a wire going in there to drive the speaker, and you can cut a hole in the back of the can and then put some epoxy or something around it. And then I would take like neoprene and go around the edge of the speaker, and then take the speaker. I need a visual aid. So let's say that this album cover is the snare. I would take the coffee can that had the speaker and put it on the edge of the snare, balance it on the metal rim, tape it down with some gaffer's tape, and get the can as close to the drum head as you can, and then just send the snare drum to that speaker, and then mic the snare. And what happens is every time the snare hits, it sends a signal to the speaker in the coffee can, and it actually makes the snare create a sound like somebody's hitting it with a stick. Crank it up really loud, let it distort, and then mic it with a 57 up close, just like you would if the drummer was playing it, and then try a couple of room mics at various distances, and I guarantee you that that will create a much more live sound than what you had before. Let's see what else. All right, and the last thing is avoid compressors and limiters unless you really, really need them on stuff, and ride the input faders. If you ever get a chance to record a full live band in the studio, ride the input faders as if you are one of the band members. I know it sounds counterintuitive in today's world, but if you know the song well and you find you know when parts are coming up and when dynamic changes are going to happen, if you actually make small changes in the faders, and don't use compression, when you listen back to it, you're going to get the kind of dynamics that you heard on that Melanie record or on the Stills Young album. And that's what it's all about. It's about players reacting to each other, feeling the moment, and then you've got to become one of the band members with the console being your instrument. So that's how you can cheat if you don't have a full audience and a full band. It's all about band members feeling it with each other. So anytime you've got to do a rhythm guitar part, even if you don't need another acoustic guitar part played, have the guy playing the Strat sitting in the room with somebody also playing an acoustic part. Having two people in the room will make them rise to the occasion and make them vibe off of each other and give it a much more live feel. So there you go. We're an hour and a half into the show, longer than I wanted to be. Do you guys have any questions before we wrap this sucker up? I agree with Luger. Cheap snare and SM57 can do wonders. There's also a snare I love. I think it's a 7-inch snare called the Black Beauty. As a matter of fact, that's a Black Beauty on the Melanie record. I don't know that it's really appropriate for today's records, though. I mean, that snare, I love the sound of the snare on some of those songs, but not so right for today's market. Can we hear more about all this next week? I feel like I'm telling bedtime stories. I don't know how much more I've got. Wow, thanks, Jahari. How about a show on panning? Actually, when I first started doing taxi TVs, and I almost did that today, I've saved the pictures. I did a show about mixing, and a lot of it was about panning and creating an oral landscape, much like a visual landscape. Excuse me. And I used my kids' plastic furniture. You know, like all kids have those little plastic chairs and tables and stuff. Maybe I'll do that next week. And I set the stuff up in our backyard. We've got a view of a mountain range from our backyard. It's only like, I don't know, maybe 0.8 of a mile away from us. So I saved those pictures, and I actually did an episode explaining front to back and the dimensions of mixing using this graphical layout of pictures of our backyard and using the kids' lawn furniture to show how things should be panned. So maybe next week I'll do that. We'll see. Yeah, 57s are absolutely a great go-to, Mike. I could probably do an entire album with just 57s. Somebody earlier asked if I miss the studio. Yeah, I miss all the good days in the studio. All right. It seems like you guys don't really have any questions. So with that, I bid you a very, very happy, healthy, and prosperous 2014. And may you all be blessed with lots of forwards. And thanks for watching the episode. And I will see you. I think we'll do a show on Wednesday this week. I think. I may be out of the office, but we'll let you know. All right. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for watching, and certainly see you next week for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live.